I've been having a hard time lately because there's a certain sort of thing that comes over me, a certain kind of fear, I guess, where I get stuck in these ruts sometimes where action just keeps not happening. You could say that it's procrastination, but that doesn't really fully describe it. It often feels very passive, like it's not even I who is making a decision to prevent action from happening. It's just kind of whatever is supposed to be happening through me is not happening. And this just results in a negative feedback loop where everything reinforces itself. The inaction reinforces my self-loathing, which reinforces my inaction. I have a lot of fear that results from a lack of control, a lot of uncertainty, the inability to know what's going to happen, or know exactly what I have to do. And I've always had a habit of getting paralyzed by this fear. I've also had a habit of getting paralyzed by the feeling that my work is insurmountable, that the pile of work that I have to do seems so big that it's impossible to do it at all, like Luke trying to pull the spaceship out of the water. Yeah, and so, my whole life I've just had this profound insecurity and difficulty with developing a sort of an activity in my life, a momentum. And lately I've been feeling it really hard. Lately it's been really on my mind and hurting a lot. But I think I'm out of that spell right now. And I think I'm really starting to feel and intuit a lack of interest in needing to control things, because that's been such a big deal for me for a long time, especially I think recently. The thing that I've been really acutely aware of is my lack of control and how terrifying that is, and how all of these unexpected things get in my way and confuse me. I would get overwhelmed extremely easily, and that I would get overwhelmed and it would put me in a sort of panic, which, sort of combined self-loathing with a lot of other things, and just the self-loathing that I am this way, that this is something that just constantly afflicts me, and that I have such a hard time with these things. It just all, like I said, it's a negative feedback loop that reinforces itself constantly. I haven't come into any real, I guess, realization lately about that, but it's more just that I think I'm it kind of reminds me of this thing from, I recently watched this like 13-hour video about Bionicle lore made by this guy who didn't even grow up with Bionicle. And so he like spent a whole year doing all of this research on this lore so that he could make it this 13-hour video about it. But there was a story in that lore that I really liked where there was this guy who was really slow. He was like a slower guy. And so the village elder told him, why don't you focus on being slow? Why don't you make that your thing? everyone has to have their thing. Make that your thing. You are slow, and focus on that, concentrate on that, meditate on that, and try to inhabit that as much as possible. And so he does, and so at one point you see him in the story, and he's walking very slowly, and you ask him why, and he says, he basically tells you what I just told you. But then later on, you see him in this location, and it's like, well, how did you get there? And he says that in concentrating on being slow, he actually paradoxically gained the ability to be in places where he's not. And so in a way, he actually kind of developed this extreme lightning fast travel ability by concentrating on being slow. And I do kind of like that story because there's this great gentleness, I think, to it. But I think we have this fear of being gentle because we worry that in being gentle, we won't be effective. We worry that in order to really discipline ourselves, we need to be really hard on ourselves. And there's that worry that if we are not hard on ourselves, we will never acquire discipline. And so it's been a process for me, I think, learning to, through the course of my life, learning to undo that conditioning that erroneously says discipline is hard. Because in my life, hardness has never actually resulted in discipline. It's only resulted in failure. And I'm starting to really see and intuit that actually being passive is the greatest source of my strength. That being gentle on myself and on the whole world around me, and not having expectations for the world, accepting the world as it is, as Mr. Rogers said, I like you just the way you are. That to me is actually producing better results than I've ever had before. I think for a long time I've wanted things that I just can't really have. And it's that feeling, that erroneous feeling that says that I need these things, that makes it so difficult to actually get anything done. And these are insights I've always had, really, and I don't really know why I'm only now finding this sort of, what do you call it? I don't know why I'm only now really starting to practice these things. I don't know what I've learned recently that really put that into play. I guess there's one thing, I think I do actually know. I think there's one thing that happened recently that I made a hard decision about. But that hard decision ended up really healing me. I don't know if it would be wise to really talk about it here. Usually, I'm very, very open about my private life. I'm very open about my life and the things that other people would be very secretive about normally. But this might be a case where it might not be the most wise thing to do that, and so I guess I'm not gonna talk about it in this video, go into the details. But I think I've more and more started to really understand my own weakness, I guess, in that other people are a lot stronger than me in this specific way, where they're able to really kind of exert their will on the environment around them and change it to their specifications. They are combative, they fight other people, they get angry and they don't feel weak on account of this anger. The anger actually makes them feel strong. I don't think that this is a very wise way to live, but it is a source of strength, it is a type of strength, and it is, I think, how we've generally been sort of conditioned through both genetics and upbringing, possibly even epigenetics, whatever the fuck that is. We've been kind of conditioned to view strength in that way. This sort of externalized strength, and this combative strength, and this strength in anger. But I think maybe one thing that I've always thought of as a weakness about myself actually might have more been something that was putting me on the right path in a way that I didn't know. Because I've always been a very meek and ineffectual person. I've never been able to really get angry at other people. I've never really been able to fight. I've never really been able to boss other people around or exert my will in that way. And more, that's actually kind of gotten worse over the course of my life. I actually started out a little bit more combative, and I've actually gotten more over time weaker and meeker and milder, because I've noticed that every time I try to be combative, it fails and it hurts me. And so I don't want to do things that hurt me. And so I've sort of been cutting that out slowly over the course of my life, cutting out that conditioning. And so maybe I'm just at a point where I've kind of reached that level where the guy, in focusing on being slow, has discovered this ability to be in places he isn't. Because I've been focusing on being mild and meek and blah blah blah. And I have sort of I've been cutting everything out as an attempt to sort of cut out the things that are hurting me. But I'm finding a real strength at the core of that, a real toughness at the core of that I didn't really know I had. And so I'm interested in developing that. I'm interested in focusing on that. Now that I can see that, in a way that I've never really been able to, because I've always been so conditioned. My conditioning has kind of held a lock on my perception. But now that I've removed enough of that conditioning, I'm starting to see something better. I'm starting to see the real me. I'm starting to see where actually what my thing is, in the same way that guy's thing was to be slow. And so instead of trying to be something I am not, which has been me my whole life, I'm actually finding the thing that I am, which I have never really been able to see before. And so that might yield some good results. I'm really optimistic now about where this could take me. I think I'm seeing good changes in the making. And so yeah, maybe that's something that you can try if you find it really hard to be something and you're trying to be that thing. Maybe try not being that thing. Maybe try to actively not do the thing that you want to do. Go against your conditioning. Go against your instincts. Just see where that leads you. Think of it as an experiment. See what happens. This is VEDN Day 10. I'll see you tomorrow for VEDN Day 11.